Hi, Pastor Mark here, Brantford Church of the Nazarene, Brant Naz. We're at the Bell Homestead, and I'm doing my weekly Take a Break, where I answer questions that you've sent to me regarding either the Christian faith or the Bible. And this week's question comes from last week's question. Last week's question was, why do we need Jesus? Isn't just being good enough? If we're good enough to get to heaven, isn't that good enough for us? And we talked about that. So if you want to see that, go back to last week's video clip and you'll see what I said there. This kind of stems from that. This week's question comes by, why do Christians say that Jesus is the only way? He's one way to God, one way to heaven is through Jesus. Why do they say that? Well, really, when Christians say that, they're saying what Jesus himself said. They're not looking at some doctrine or something and saying, well, we believe this because we put these two facts together. They say it because they're just simply repeating what Jesus himself said. Jesus said in the New Testament, we find his words where he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So Jesus himself said that he is the only one who we come to the Father through. No one comes to the Father except through me. But even with the early church, with the apostles, the disciples of Jesus, those who walked this earth with Jesus at that time, or those who first started the church, I think of the Apostle Peter. He had this to say, do we find recorded in the book of Acts. It says, salvation is found in no one else, for there is no name under the heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. Meaning Jesus is the only name by which we must be saved. And then the Apostle Paul, who was key and instrumental in first establishing the church to do that, he said, for there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Jesus Christ. But so when Christians say Jesus is the only way, Jesus is the one way to get to God, the one way to get to heaven, they're not making up a doctrine, they're repeating what Jesus himself said and reiterating what he said. But it does prompt us with the question then, but why is he the only way? Why is he the only way? Well, we are reminded of that in a verse that we find in Corinthians that says to us, but God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, that in him we might become the righteousness of God. So we had the sin, Jesus did not have the sin. But through what Jesus did on the cross and his resurrection, he took our sin from us and put it on him, is what God the Father did. So that's why we come through Jesus Christ to do that. But we find there, all of the religions would say, it's not what God does, it's what we do. But Christianity says it's not what we do, it's what God does. But that does raise the question that some people would ask. They would say, well, what about those who have never heard then? If they've never heard about Jesus, what hope have they got? Well, first of all, when we respond like that, I would just very briefly say that usually when most people raise that objection, it's not because they're really concerned about those who have never heard about Jesus, it's because they don't want to wrestle with the question themselves. But apart from that, when we deal directly with the question of what about those who have never heard, we see that in the Bible, in the book of Acts, where it talks about the establishment of the church, the very first chapter says that through all of creation, God's power and God's divinity could be seen. And because of that, no one was without excuse. Anthropologists throughout the years have studied people groups. And apparently they claim that there's no people group that's ever been found that they don't have some sort of sense of someone or something greater than them. And that sense of having someone and someone greater than them has taken them to the place where they form some form of worship. But it's also interesting to note they're without excuse because they can see God through his creation all around him, and so they're without excuse. But no anthropologists say no group has ever been found to turn to God, the true God, without hearing about Jesus. So that puts a compelling message upon those of us who profess to be Jesus followers, those of us who profess to be Christians, Christ followers. As we do that, the onus on us is that we need to be prepared to proclaim that good news. We need to be prepared to tell other people, whether it be on the other side of the world or whether it be to our next door neighbor. We need to share that others hear about Jesus Christ because he is the one way. He is the only way to God the Father and to eternity in heaven. Thanks for joining me again here on Facebook Live for Take a Break with Pastor Mark. And if you have questions that you have for me, I would encourage you to either email me at brandonasmark, one word, brandonasmark, at gmail.com, or you can leave a comment in the comment section, or you can put it in a private message to me, and I'll seek to answer those questions for you. I also invite you, if you care to join us on Sunday mornings at 10:30, either live in person at 347 Fairview Drive, Brantford, or if you prefer to join us here online through this form here, you found this clip on Facebook, our group page, and this is where you'll find us 10:30 Sunday mornings, broadcasting our services live. Look forward to joining you then, or else for next week for Take a Break of Time. So thanks for joining me, and may the Lord bless you this week.